The Honda Super Cub 50 has been universally praised by many and qualified with numerous exciting adjectives. It's been called fun, reliable, efficient, and many other good names. It has even been said explicitly that you meet the nicest people on a Honda, that is, the Super Cub, essentially. Eager not to lose out, I bought a used one, a 30-year-old example when Honda still made them like they meant business, and I can summarize my experience with the Super Cub 50 in one word: boring. No, two words actually: extremely boring. But it wasn't always boring. I was intensely attracted to the Super Cub at first, so attracted that the little bike started featuring in my dreams. So, what changed? At what point did fun, excitement, and eager anticipation turn to boredom? Stay tuned and I'll tell you all about it. Let's get business. So, what attracted me to this extremely boring machine? Well, as with less than ideal relationships, I had imagined it would be bliss and lead to forever after. Turns out, I let beauty and idle gossip fool me. My lamentations partially out of the way, I've always loved the Honda Super Cub, especially the 50. The step-through design, though feminine looking, has always held a strong appeal for me, even as a kid. Then the famed reliability. Every owner I talked to had owned one for between 5 and 20 years, male and female, young and old. They all agreed on the following. First, they were sure their Super Cubs would outlast them, and they had no doubt that they will pass the little bikes to their kids when their time came. Second, they did very little maintenance on these bikes. They only ever reported engine oil changes for years, even when thoroughly abused. Third, they also agreed that the bike was the most economical thing to ride or drive on 2 or 4 wheels. When I looked at the numbers and saw about 150 kilometers to the liter, my jaw dropped in wonder and awe. I began closely looking at every Super Cub that passed me by, and when chanced interviewing every owner who was willing to talk. This was the initial attraction to the Super Cub 50, but as it turned out, there's more. There are distinct reasons why I acted on the first attraction, reasons why I chose the Honda Super Cub 50. Most owners don't speak ill of their vehicles, at least while they still own them. So I was cautious even after all the good stories I heard from present owners of the bike. However, when I started my research, a clear pattern emerged. Honda clearly couldn't have sold 1 million copies of this bike through the years if it were crap. I started looking more closely. When I discovered that things like the rear fender are made of solid metal as opposed to the numerous plastic affairs on today's bikes, I started asking how much the little bike was sold for. One day, sitting close to a packed one, I saw that even without any experience with this sort of bike, I could easily take everything apart and put it back, including the engine, without much force. That was when my dreams started featuring the Cub. When Honda recently announced that the Super Cub 50 would be discontinued, that was all the push I needed. Without wasting time, I chose the nearest sales plot, which is in another town from where I live, and bought a used 1995 copy with about 46,000 kilometers on the clock, which translates roughly to about 28,000 miles. A barely broken in unit, if you ask me. Why 1995? Simple. Most modern vehicles have no appeal to me. Manufacturers simply don't make them like they used to anymore. Today, accountants and the government decide, instead of pure engineering genius, turbos, 1.5 liters, 3-cylinder vehicles, and all the other funny stuffs. This is why I chose a 1995 carbureted model, which for me represents the heights and very zenith of the Honda Super Cub 50. As it turned out, unfortunately, the first attempt to purchase this bike ended in premium disappointment. When I first attempted to buy my Honda 50, I actually turned back and refused to purchase any of the units there. Almost everything I saw was at the end of its service life, with mileages running from 500,000 to 800,000 kilometers, which is about 300,000 to about 500,000 miles. And of course, with rough bodies, torn seats, roughing, not rusted carriages, and dents to make you question your life choices. There my unit wasn't yet available on the lot. I came back frustrated, waited for about a month, and tried again. That was when I saw this bike, now mine in all its glory. Compared to the others, it was almost brand new. It had a mileage of less than 50,000 kilometers on the clock, had an almost perfect body, save some scratches that I'm sure it took during transportation, like this one, and this one ahead. Finally, I was able to lay my hands on this piece of fine automotive history, and it was all mine to the end of time. That is, if I decide not to sell it down the line. So, having settled, what were the first impressions? Like most of the bikes from this era coming out of Japan, documentation was non-existent, at least for me. I was lucky to pinpoint its year of manufacture as 1995, but everything else was guesswork, intuition, and plain old experience. For instance, I took a careful look at the speed clock, and though I discovered that it wasn't working, I knew it had worked in the not so distant past, because the cable was working great with just the white plastic gear foot missing. The paint was also in overall great condition, indicating very fair use through its life. The footrest cushions for the rider also looked great, indicating minimal use. The inner recesses of the bike, where rust would typically be, were clean. The grips were nice and original, and importantly, the frame and seat were rot-free. I also took out the battery, though at the end of its service life, it was an original Yuasa unit, which is OEM for the bike, together with its tires, which as you can see are Bridgestones. Bridgestone is also OEM for this bike, though both tires weren't in their best shapes. Knowing that they were OEM meant one thing: the tires were original, meaning the bike was fairly used, or the previous user was careful enough to replace the tires with OEM when it was time, which is something good. I've since replaced the rear tire, but finding the bike's original OEM parts at the time of purchase was part of the reason I took this calculated risk. Further, the chain cover is original, with all the Japanese stickers still on it and very legible. The swing arm also has the original sticker still looking great and also very legible. As for the speedometer, I later discovered it was missing a gear tooth, which would have fallen out when the sellers removed the front hub during transportation and the sales display. This further reinforced my belief that throughout the time of this bike in Japan, the speed meter actually worked and the mileage is as low as indicated. The mirrors expectedly were missing. I needed to buy 2 pairs of an aftermarket arrangement so that I can safely observe traffic behind me. There was another thing missing, which I'm yet to replace: the leg shield. I plan on getting a replacement sooner rather than later. Overall, I have good reasons to believe that this 1995 Honda Super Cub, which I've nicknamed Slow C and now used daily, is an excellent buy. For instance, the rubber on the brake pedal is still there, and for some strange reason, I've also left it on. The gear lever is in great physical condition. The foot pegs are as if they haven't been used, and the paintwork is in overall great condition. I also got an original key, which expectedly opens the ignition, works on the central lock, and also operates the helmet lock without any queries. I rode this bike about 100 kilometers, which is roughly 60 miles from the small town where I bought it to my base. Since then, I've taken to the streets of the city where I'm a resident almost daily, commuting for one reason or another on the bike. I've powered its small engine through rain, sun, shine, day, night, and just about any terrain type. I've also handled it through well-paved highways and pothole-ridden back streets. I've been through mud with it and have powered it through speed bumps. And I've done all this with a passenger behind me and sometimes solo. So believe me when I say that in these few thousand miles I've put on the bike, I've seen it all. First, let's start with what's fun with slow C, as I've come to jokingly call it. Contrary to what I say and honestly believe, there is some fun to be had with the bike if you are not being too serious with yourself. First, with a little working of the throttle, you can easily ride a bike throughout the day on third gear only, much like an automatic transmission bike or one with a CVT. Coming from a car with an automatic transmission and hating to play around with only 3 gears, this is a default mode I ride the bike in all day, with the passenger and without, with load and without, and honestly, it's fun. And the bike sounds better too, only extremely slow around hills after slowing down considerably or when needing to pick up speed from a stop. Second, though the bike was originally designed to take only the rider, I've added foot pegs to the rear and occasionally have a passenger behind me. The only challenge is that the passenger must be within reasonable weight limits to avoid overwhelming the little engine. If a passenger is brave enough to face the stainless steel rear rack, the slow riding bike makes for perfect conversations and usually bonding time as I navigate through light traffic. Third, the fuel economy is very impressive, coming from a 3.3 liter V6. It's also unbelievable. Riding the bike in town, I get something around 100 kilometers to a liter, and I'm a large rider who also weighs a little more than average. Were I to weigh around 50 to 60 kilograms, that is around the 130 pounds mark, I'm sure I'd get something better and closer to the advertised figures of around 130 to 150 kilometers to the liter. However, there's a catch. To get this great gas mileage, I have to ride the bike as a grandma would, below 30 kilometers per hour, and I must not have any load on the rack. While this is possible, and I do it most of the time, it's pure torture. I don't do it for the gas mileage though. Fuel economy is more like a secondary benefit. The main reason I do it is to make sure that the bike lasts as long as possible. This is one bike I plan on keeping forever. Finally, as with every vehicle I own, I get compliments all the time on how clean and functional looking the bike is. The stares, the looks, and the compliments make living with a super boring bike easier. But that doesn't mean the boring part goes away. As a matter of fact, there isn't a day on the bike that I don't get reminded of just how boring the little bike actually is. First, the top speed of the Honda 50 is about 60 kilometers per hour, which roughly translates to about 30 miles per hour. This is very slow, as you already know. The reality is that riding at that top speed isn't advisable, as it vibrates the whole bike, makes it loud, and wastes fuel. Redlining the engine is also a sure way to get the bike to pack up sooner rather than later. The ideal sweet spot, about 30 kilometers an hour, which is even slower than a grandma should be going. Second, as if the unimpressive top speed isn't annoying enough, it gets worse with load or a passenger. Usually, on steep inclines, you have to downshift to second gear and then climb slowly while every other vehicle passes you by. It's super frustrating, to put it mildly. Third, the bike is designed for riders who are around 5.5 feet tall or less. The frame is close to the ground with very little ground clearance, and the seat is small. If you are a larger rider like I am, you will need to shift all the way back to avoid pushing your knees too forward. Unfortunately, you can't realistically shift backwards if you have something on the carriage or a passenger. Finally, the fuel tank is small. very small. Thinking about a gallon of gasoline, which translates to under 4 liters of fuel, you constantly need to refuel unless you ride alone, gently, have no hills to conquer, weigh like a leaf, and ultimately ride like a 65-year-old grandma. However, the Honda 50 Super Cub isn't a bike that is 100% boring. There are some surprises that the bike threw at me, surprises that were new to me as an experienced rider, surprises that still make me look at the unit with awe, and ultimately, surprises that make me look forward to mounting the bike daily. Now, if I say the Honda Super Cub is only boring, that won't be the entire picture. A tiny little bike with an equally tiny little engine has a lot of surprises that it threw at me with reckless abandon. First, on face value, the Honda 50 Super Cub is mistakenly believed not to have a clutch. In reality, however, it has what's called a centrifugal clutch, a wet clutch system that has no use of an external clutch lever. To use the clutch, you need to depress the gear change pedal slightly and then fully. It's essentially a two-stage type of lever where the first action engages the clutch and the second gets you into gear, or if already moving, another gear. Though this is now muscle memory, it took some getting used to initially, and before that happened, it was stiff, noisy, and sounded very unnatural anytime I changed gears. Immediately I mastered it, everything became much smoother. Second, closely related to the above, I also discovered that the best way to change gears is not only by easing off on the throttle, but by also considerably slowing down. Miss this part and the gear change makes a banging noise that is as annoying as it is scary. Third, the bike is at its best when reading at 30 km per hour or less. Any sort of speed beyond this considerably changes the bike's sound and immediately lets you know that you are outside the sweet spot via increased vibrations. I've learned to go slow with the bike and hope that by also being steady, I'll one day win a race. Finally, there is no headlamp or taillight switch. Immediately the bike powers on, both lights come on and remain on. For the headlight, there's a low and high beam, and that's about it. For the taillight, it remains there right through the journey. As for flashers, good luck. Honda in its wisdom figured out that you won't be going fast enough to need to flash anyone your headlights, and of course they believed so much in the bike's reliability that they also put no hazard lights on it. It shouldn't be breaking down anytime soon, so why does anyone need hazards? Since getting this bike, I've made some fixes and changes to some important stuff. Let me now show you what those have been. First, I've replaced the rear tire, and not only have I changed it, but I've also upgraded the 2.25-inch size to a much bigger and more aggressive profile, 2.75 inches. This new profile has not only made the bike look a lot better from the rear, but also more aggressive. On the functional part, I've also discovered that the bike now handles better when I'm on bad roads and need to navigate sand. On the flip side, however, I've also noticed that the bigger, heavier tire has also messed up my fuel efficiency, which I honestly don't mind. Second, the bike came without any form of mirrors, which can be very dangerous on the road, especially on busy roads. I've since gotten 2 pairs of mirrors and have installed a pair. The bike now looks better and I can ride with peace of mind as I observe traffic behind me without needing to turn backwards. Third, I've added rear foot pegs for the times when I need to take a passenger. However, unlike the permanent affair most of the users around me use, I decided on a smart temporary screw-on affair that I intend to take off in the near future. The bike is slow enough with just me as passenger. I don't intend to further bore my life with added passengers on this tiny little piece of engineering. Fourth, I've changed the battery. The original unit which I found on the bike was at the end of its service life and was as good as gone. It didn't hold any charge and wouldn't let me operate the horn and indicators, which are very important safety considerations for me. However, there are a few more fixes that need to be made. Once they are done, the bike will be good enough to travel to the other end of the world, provided it is reading slowly and the engine oil is changed frequently. Here are the fixes to be made. First, the front tire is an original Bridgestone. Unfortunately, it's at the end of its service life and has started cracking, as you can see. I'll need to replace the tire sooner rather than later. Second, the leg shield is notoriously absent, and I don't appreciate how badly rainfall splashes on me when I need to ride in the rain or right after serious rainfall. I've taken a look at a few of these guards, but they are all cheap imitations, and I don't want to fit on any substandard part on the bike. Immediately I come across an original one, even if it's used, I'll buy and install same without thinking twice. Third, the front brake cable needs to be changed. When the bike first came to me, it was already seized and wouldn't operate. Other than that, I'm pretty sure everything else to make it work is in order. I'll hunt for the original cable in my spare time and change it so that I'll have handbrake capabilities again. Fourth, I want the speed meter to work. For this, I've determined that I need the front plastic gear in the front brake panel to get the counter to turn. I'm also on the hunt for this part and will fit it in as soon as I find it. Finally, I have a messed up choke cable that I'm yet to give attention to. Because I live and ride the bikes in the tropics, it starts all the time, even on truly cold mornings. However, I'm looking to fully restore this little bike to its showroom state, and that includes everything running and functional, the delinquent choke cable inclusive. There is no single doubt that the Honda Super Cub 50 is one of the most boring motorcycles of all time. Without doubt too, it's one of the most fun and exciting depending on your use case. If you are lightweight, drive around flat roads, don't carry passengers or goods, are very fuel conscious, have no problems riding like a 96-year-old great-grandfather, and are interested in something that will outlast you while giving you as little trouble as possible while on the road, this is the perfect bike for you. Conversely, if you are above 70 kg, will be carrying goods or a passenger, appreciate power and live around mountains, without question, the 1995 Honda Super Cub 50 is the ultimate torture machine for you. Don't say I didn't warn you. This isn't goodbye. Catch ya on the next one.